Call to order the regular meeting of the Rio Dell City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Barnes.
Absent and excused.
Recording stopped.
Councilmember Orr.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Woodall.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Recording in progress.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public presentations. This time is for persons who wish to address the council on any matter not on this agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. As such, a dialogue with the council staff is not
Recording stopped.
under the Ralph M. Brown Act. Items requiring council action not listed on this agenda may be placed on the next regular agenda for consideration if the council directs. Unless a finding is made by at least 2/3 of the council that the item came up after the agenda was posted and is of an urgency nature requiring immediate action. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Would
Recording
anyone
in progress.
like to make public comment? Would you come forward? And if you could just introduce yourself and have at it.
My name is Deborah Lynn Gregory Fisher, and I live down in the Rio Dell apartments, and I've been here for several years, so I'm kind of an eco-fruit. And I am wondering if there is an attorney that will represent me in snipping the cigarette filters off of cigarettes. They've discovered that the deep inhaling from the cigarette butts is causing deep tissue cancers. With that being said, it's something that is supposedly a status symbol. We also know it's addictive. We, the people that live in the community, really don't need to be stepping through the cigarette butts. We have a mess down in front of the Rio Dell apartments that I used to clean it up. I got poked by a needle. I spent a year going through that. I've had cancer, and don't get me wrong, I revenge smoked, and I liked smoking. My parents smoked, they used to blow it over me, and my brothers and sisters. But the cigarette butts my mother never threw. They went down the porch stoop onto the cement slab, and then they'd clean that like once or twice a year. My problem is, in doing these cleaning of the cigarette butts, it literally soaked my shoes, and I got a buzz just from cleaning. I can't imagine anymore the entire world with this going on. And it's really not that they mean to. When you put together, it's a maternal sucking that they're not aware of, and then there's the automated that becomes a habit. And then the tobacco itself. These people really don't even know that they're dropping them. And if they do, it's so ingrained that they really don't care. Somebody else is addicted with it. The world is wrong. It's not their problem. They're addicted. I say it's the company's problem. They should have their cigarette and the fix. And either smoke your fix or quit. That's what I said. Smoke your fix or quit. I don't want it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Attorney, please.
Okay. Any other public comment from people in the room? Nope. Okay, do we have any hands raised? Do we have any emails? Okay, we will close then public presentations and move on to the consent calendar. Would anybody in the public like to remove an item from the consent calendar? Sharon?
I just had a question on the CDBG fund budget adjustment.
And that is number 5. Okay. Anything else to be removed from the consent calendar from the public? Any hands raised? Emails?
Yep. I'll make a motion that we approve 1, 2, 3, and 5.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Unless somebody else on the council would like to remove anything from the consent calendar. Nope, nope. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second to approve items 1, 2, 3, and 4? We have a second, vote. I don't know, Frank, you're sending mixed messages, okay. Motion carries 4-0. I will turn it over to Sharon.
I just had a question. It refers to 3 projects, and that's why the additional budget allocation, which is great, but it doesn't say what the projects are. I was just wondering what the projects were, the additional 3 projects.
This is the process for earthquake repair under the city's owner-occupied rehabilitation program.
Yes.
One is for the Rittenhour family on Bellevue Avenue. One is for Steve Saunders on Rigby Avenue. And the other one is for Mary McGrath. And I want to say that may be on Rigby as well.
I believe so.
Those are the 3.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
It does, okay. Do I have a motion to pass item number 5 of the consent calendar?
So,
A second.
Okay, all right, motion and a second, everybody please. And item 5 passes 4-0. Reports and staff communications, page 30 in our packet. I will turn it over to our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Carter. So the council may recall that the Eel River Trail, a portion of the Eel River Trail had to be cut from the project due to budget constraints. And that was the far northern end of the trail at Davis Street. An ADA accessible ramp was not included in the Clean California portion of the funding for that particular project. So staff has been working on developing strategies to get that remaining portion of the trail completed. And we've looked at multiple different funding sources, but the most likely one at this point in time is through the Community Development Block Grant Program. There is a NOFA out currently that we intend to make application for this project. Staff at the Department of Housing and Community Development are aware of the project. They're very excited about it. As the council may recall, part of our strategy with that was to basically create a shovel-ready project that would be attractive to funders. And so the folks at HCD are really excited about the project, and we are hoping that the remainder will be funded. So part of and Kevin Caldwell, our community development director, has been working diligently and almost exclusively on updating some of the environmental documents, because while it's essentially a shovel-ready project, there is some fine tailoring that has to be done in order to make application through for CDBG funding and housing and community development. So he's been working on a very lengthy environmental document for that particular project. And we are basically ready to hold a hearing, a public hearing, which is required in the CDBG process. And we want to invite the public to that meeting, which will be next Tuesday, the 22nd at 5:30 p.m. here at City Hall. So it will be before the Planning Commission meeting, which is also that evening at 6 o'clock. So this is an opportunity, as with all the major CDBG applications, we have to go through kind of a public meeting process where the public can provide input on the project. So again, that'll be next Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. right here at City Hall. And we're looking forward to moving this project forward and hopefully getting it funded and getting the trail fully completed within a couple of years. And the rest of the staff report is written up starting on page 30, and staff is happy to answer any questions that the council might have.
Okay, thank you, city manager. Do we have any questions from the council member Woodall? No questions. Council member Warren?
no question.
Council member Wilson?
No question.
Questions from the public? Hands raised. Emails. Okey dokey. Then we will move along to special presentations and study sessions. Item 1, presentation by Redwood Coast Energy Authority on Diablo Canyon Power Plant nuclear allocation, page 33 in our packets.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Carter, members of the council. I'll give Rosa a second here to set up the PowerPoint. The council may recall our last meeting at the Councilmember Wilson's suggestion and the council's request that RCA provide a presentation to the council related to the acceptance of nuclear power allocations, which is a subject way over my head, but some staff from the Rio Coast Energy Authority, which Rio Dell is an original member of the authority, are here to provide a presentation on this particular subject. And I believe one of our goals here is to let the council kind of weigh in on your opinions on acceptance of a nuclear portfolio into the power mix, and ultimately to help advise our representative on the RCEA board, Councilmember Frank Wilson, on his upcoming vote, which my understanding is potentially this might come up for a vote in the relatively near future again, or certainly will be coming up in the next year or so. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over.
Hi, thank you, Council. My name is Eileen Herbeck. I'm the Interim Executive Director at Redwood Coast Energy Authority. And I'm here with Richard Engel, the Director of Power Resources. He is going to give the presentation, but I wanted to just give you a little background as to why we're here so soon after last month's meeting. We brought this to a vote to Redwood Coast Energy Authority last month. And the board of directors didn't take action on the vote, which essentially would mean we would not accept the allocation from Diablo Canyon. However, there was a question by one of our board members about how many votes would be required for the motion to pass. And because this was community choice energy business, it's a weighted vote and it's a little bit more complicated than just a majority vote. And incorrect information was given to the board, and we believe that that could have influenced the vote. So what we're going to be doing is bringing this back to the board of directors next week for them to consider a motion to reconsider. And so if the motion to reconsider passes, then the board will have another chance to vote on whether or not to accept the allocation. Once we knew that, we called and asked if we could go ahead and get on your agenda to give you the presentation and not wait till next year. So with that, I will pass it over to Richard Engel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Good evening, council members. Thank you for hosting our presentation this evening. As you can see on the slide, it says presentation to Community Advisory Committee. In addition to our board of directors, we also have a Community Advisory Committee. They just took up this matter back on the 8th of this month. And we got the request on fairly short notice to provide you with a presentation. I would have liked to have made a custom presentation for you, but just given the lack of time, what I did was I just made a few annotations on the presentation that we recently gave to our CAC that just fills in a couple of more details that emerged since that recent presentation. So if we go ahead to the next slide. As Eileen mentioned, the board, took this up in September, but there was this process issue that came up. So there's an opportunity for them to revisit this. One kind of silver lining, if you will, on this turn of events was that we had time that we previously thought we didn't have to bring this before our Community Advisory Committee. They only meet every 2 months. And there is a time limit on how long we have to respond to the offer to take this nuclear allocation. So originally we thought there wouldn't be an opportunity to move them in. As it turned out, we did have time this month to get the CAC's input on it. So that's noted at the bottom of the slide. We can go to the next slide. So just by way of background, Diablo Canyon Nuclear Plant is the only remaining nuclear plant in California. It's operated by PG&E, and it's located near Morro Bay on the Central Coast. It's been operating since 1985, and it provides about 10% of all the electricity generated in California. There was a plan to retire the plant, and it has 2 generating units that each generate about 1 gigawatt of power. And the plan was to retire one of those in 2024 and the other one in 2025. And so there was an application for that was approved by the Public Utilities Commission. Next slide, please. But some things happened. There was a big heat wave in 2020 that you'll recall that led to rolling power outages across the state. And then there was more of that in 2022. There were also some serious delays in bringing on the replacement generation resources that would have allowed the Diablo Canyon plant to close without, making the grid vulnerable. And because of those delays and because of these heat waves and concerns about continuing outages, a law was passed that basically allowed the extension of Diablo Canyon for an extra 5 years. So we now have one of the plants retiring in 2029 and the other one in 2030. Next slide, please. The way this is working is that everybody in the state is on the hook, not even just the PG&E ratepayers, but ratepayers across the state are on the hook to pay for keeping the plant operating for those extra 5 years. That's considered critical to just having electric reliability across the state because of how large a portion of the electricity comes from that plant. Everybody's going to have part of the charge for these extra 5 years of operation on their utility bills, whether they like it or not. The question is, do the electricity providers like RCEA want to accept an allocated portion of this power? Since the customers are already paying for it, we don't have to shell out any additional money to take this allocation. It's just a choice of do you want it or not. Once the Public Utilities Commission officially announces how much power is being allocated to each electricity provider, we'll have 30 days to respond to that. And the current expectation is that that announcement is going to come out in the first part of November, so just a couple of weeks from now. There's a power content label, which is a postcard that we send out once a year, which tells people what our power was made up of in the previous year. So this will show up on that power content label if our board chooses to accept the allocation. Next slide, please. So the language here, it's kind of funny because at the time that we took this to our CAC, we were kind of thinking of this, well, like the board had already made this decision. So it says if RCA had accepted the allocation, please interpret that as if RCA accepts the allocation, since at this point it's not really a done deal anymore. So in the event that RCEA's board says yes to the allocation, then everybody's going to get these clean energy benefits that they're already paying for. There won't be any additional nuclear power generated. This has no effect on how much electricity actually gets produced. It's just whether we're accepting that allocation, and it shows up on our label if we do. If we say no to it, then we don't get the clean energy benefits. We have to, get those equivalent clean energy benefits elsewhere. And there's RA benefits it mentions there. That's kind of a fine point. There's resource adequacy, which is just the reliability, its capacity that the state requires us to procure. And some of that does come from the Diablo Canyon plant. That's not something that shows up on our power content label. That's kind of a separate product. Next slide, please. So the reason this went to the board had to do with making a decision on nuclear power in particular. Back when we first adopted our energy risk management policy, which is the document that guides our decision-making about power procurement, the board opted to have a prohibition on nuclear power in that. I'll get into that a little bit more on the next slide. Because of that risk policy, we've been offered nuclear allocations in the past. and we've declined them in keeping with that policy. We were also offered allocations of hydropower, which is another form of emissions-free energy, and we've been accepting the hydropower because that's not in conflict with our policy. So the reason we're taking it up now is because there's this new allocation that has to do with that 5-year extension of the plan. And this coincides with us being in a time where we've had sharp increases in costs of other sources of renewable or carbon-free energy. So our board has set goals of how much of this clean energy we're expected to procure, and it's just gotten financially trickier to do that. So it's kind of hard for staff to just say, nah, when we're being offered essentially a free resource. We felt a responsibility to take that to our board for them to reconsider. The little note at the bottom here just shows, so there are 25 programs like ours across California. We're the one that serves Humboldt County. There's another one that serves Sonoma and Mendocino. There's one that serves Marin, et cetera. Several of those boards have already taken this up and already made decisions. And as far as we're aware, all of them that have taken it up to their boards yet have opted to take it. We haven't yet become aware of any that have turned it down. So that's just the facts as we know it currently. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is the actual language from our energy risk management policy. It's a section on prohibited sources, and it includes nuclear on that list. It does say exceptions to this prohibition may be needed for occasional short-term transactions. Because this is just a 1-year offering for the year 2025 that's under consideration right now, we, in consultation with our general counsel, have deemed that the board could say yes to this as, you know, a short-term transaction without actually having to go back and amend the risk policy. So we just wanted that clarification that this isn't necessarily inconsistent with our risk policy as long as it's a one-off decision. The way we're looking at it, the way we presented it to our board is we would come back to them annually to revisit this decision in future years. So each time they take it up, it would be a short-term decision. We're not asking them to decide all the way out to 2030. Next slide, please. So this decision tree here kind of shows 3 different scenarios we've presented to our board for thinking about this. Scenario 1 is them just saying no to the nuclear allocation. And we already talked about that does not change our finances, doesn't change our power portfolio. The numbers you see here are actually a little bit out of date already. All 3 scenarios show us having our net revenues for our community choice energy program being in the red for 2025. Actually, until this morning, we believed that to be the case. There have been some policy changes at the state level, a new regulatory shift that's happened that actually, I don't need to go into the details right now unless people want to hear about it, but it basically improves the financial outlook for us and other electricity providers such that we do expect to be in the black modestly in 2025 now. But the difference between these scenarios is still about the same. Under scenario 1, we're not taking the allocation, and it shows how much greenhouse gas emissions we would have in our portfolio. Under scenario 2, we could use this allocation to reduce our costs. We would do that by selling off an equivalent amount of hydropower so that our greenhouse gases stay the same, but we wind up saving some money to the tune of about $500,000. That $500,000 is a little bit speculative because this is an instrument that's not something that we can just turn around and sell off for cash immediately. We have to offer it into the market, and it's our best guess that we could generate somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 by doing that. So scenario 2 shows us better off by $500,000. Scenario 3 is where instead of trying to use this as a cost-saving measure, we use it as a measure for making our portfolio environmentally better by reducing our greenhouse gas emissions further. So in this case, it doesn't help us financially, but it does reduce our greenhouse gases. One other thing I'll just point out on this slide is that this total allocation is pretty small. It's only expected to make up about 2% of all of our electric portfolio for the year. Next slide, please. So this just shows that power content label that I mentioned earlier. This just gives you an idea of what we expect this to look like in 2025 if we do or don't take that allocation. So it just shows under the scenario where we do take the allocation, it changes our nuclear percentage from 0 to 2% and allows us to shave an approximately equal amount of power off of the category that's called unspecified power. That's kind of the power that can't be linked to any particular source and is kind of the highest emissions part of our portfolio. These are very preliminary numbers because we won't really know what those numbers look like until after 2025 is over, because we're kind of constantly adjusting our portfolio as time goes by. Next slide, please. That scenario 2, where we're using this as a financial instrument, like I said, about $500,000 savings, and you could ignore the 5.4% reduction in net losses because that, like I said, our whole financial position is shifted enough that we're not actually looking at net losses for the year. But the bottom line is that it's not a huge game changer for us financially, but it's a help. Under scenario 3, that number still applies, about 7.5% emissions reduction if we take this allocation for the year. We, as you may know, we have an alternative product people can opt up to if they choose. So some of our customers want to have 100% renewable energy, and they would still have 100% renewable. Nuclear is not renewable, so they would still just be getting a mix of hydro and solar and wind power. This would only apply for the other customers who are not opting up to our 100% renewable premium product. And like I said, we'll be taking this back to our board annually. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to close this by mentioning the outcome of the Community Advisory Committee meeting. They had pretty extensive discussion on this, and they ended up with 8 votes in favor of taking the allocation, 3 opposed, and 1 abstention. One other thing that came out of this discussion, both our board and our Community Advisory Committee would like us to take this opportunity to also revisit our policy platform that our board has approved, to add some language in that on nuclear power, because I think the general sentiment we're hearing both from our board and our CAC is they don't want this to be interpreted as an endorsement of nuclear power if the board does take this on. So they don't want it to look like our CEA is proposing that we should build more nuclear plants. It sounds like they do want to keep the nuclear prohibition generally in our risk policy, and they're interested in aligning our policy platform that allows us to do advocacy before the state legislature on nuclear issues. With that, Eileen and I are happy to take questions.
Thank you so much for being here and for that presentation. I thought that made it easier to understand. I appreciate it. So let's take discussion from the council. Wilson, do you want to go first, or?
Well, I don't know, are we able to put this on the agenda that we can, I would like to have, similar to what the Citizens Advisory Committee did. They were given the option to say, do you want to accept this allocation, or you don't accept this allocation? Our vote, I believe, I don't know if you have all of the numbers of who votes what. I believe Rio Dell has a 6% vote.
Okay.
Out of the weighted vote. County has, what's the county's? Maybe you can tell me.
I believe it's 39, okay.
So what the county has, their vote alone is 39%. So when a couple of the bigger cities, I don't know whether Arcata and Eureka team up with the county goes after, you go whatever direction the county goes, they pretty well swing it. If the county goes one way and the rest of the board wants to vote, it takes just about the rest of the board to make up to oppose it if the county disagrees with it. But what I want to do is, rather than I have my own views on nuclear, and I can state those or not. I'm not totally against nuclear. I'm not real in favor of it in the state that Dale Canyon is in, which I would call an older style or traditional style of nuclear power. There's a lot of new stuff coming down the road, which won't really come into effect probably until after I'm dead, but, the newer stuff is definitely I'm more in favor of, but Diamond Canyon still remains the old style. And so where my 6% vote goes is what I'm asking from the city of Rio Dell, what I'm asking a consensus from the council, how I vote rather than be Councilmember Wilson's state. And if that creates flack, it creates flack, but let it be the council's flack. No,
No, I appreciate you bringing it to us and letting us weigh in and opine. I like that, so thank you. Okay, Councilmember Woodall, what do you think?
I think it'd be prudent to accept the allocations. And, if we, let's see, where the one was, where we're using it to make money or sell off a little bit, would we still at that point still be, if there was a necessary, would we still be able to access some of the power from well, like they were saying with the shortages of electricity and things, would we still be able to access the energy?
I'm not sure I understand.
I'm not sure I said it right either, so. We'll just go with, I think it'd be prudent to accept the allocations until 2030.
Councilmember Warren.
I agree, accepting it seems to be the great way to go. If there's a catastrophic event and something happens, we're gonna be glowing altogether, saying that, we told you so, we didn't take it. So, it makes no sense to me not to, if it's there, take it.
Okay, I guess that leaves it to me and to opine on the issue. And I also, the topic of nuclear power is, we could be here. You get me and Frank going, we're gonna be here a long time. I don't wanna be here a long time, but I'm not entirely opposed to nuclear power. I agree with what Councilmember Wilson said. I wish that they weren't right on the ocean, or I wish we could like do things a little bit differently. However, it's not gonna change our bill. It's already there, we're already paying for it. So yeah, I think just go ahead and accept it. But that's me, and we're not voting, we're just kind of informing you.
we're doing a consensus.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. And that's what rather than walk in there and say one way or the other.
Sure.
So that's what I wanted to get from there. To accept it is to go ahead and accept it, we paid for it, accept it. And it's in the last meeting, Supervisor Wilson from county was doing the representing for the normal zoning, Natalie Laurel was absent, and he was there speaking. And his comment was, it really doesn't change the fact how these lights get their electricity. There's no nuclear. You know, like I say, we go all night on this, but there's no nuclear power. I would challenge him to get those electrons. It would take, I think it would take as much effort as Elon Musk getting the booster rocket back to get those electrons from Diamond Canyon to Humboldt County. And so it's a lot of the stuff that's on paper, because the renewables that RCA have are primarily solar and water. And that's they're not coming from Humboldt County, they're coming from some of them out of state and some of them in the other part of the state. And so thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Wilson. I always appreciate giving the chance to inform your vote. I appreciate it. Do we need anything else?
I don't know if you did public comment.
Yes, I was gonna see if we needed, do we have public comment from anybody in the room on this? Yep, okay, come on up.
First of all, the drive out that we have.
I'm sorry, will you come up and speak into the microphone for me?
I'm coming. The drive out that we have up here. Will that store more dogs in the future? And I thought that was where we were getting credit from. Second of all, there's no money for super funds. There are those who have gone before and given their lives to keep us from those messes. And it seems as though everybody wants to kick the can down the road on solar and wind. And the one that bothers me the most, being from Southside Detroit, is Governor Whitmer canceling all the coal mines, or the coal Thomas Alva Edison electric plant, because she doesn't like scrubbers in the chimneys, and now they're putting carbon back into the ground. I don't understand it. I really don't. It's just another kick the can down the road, only this can, if you kick it too very long, it'll kick back. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? I see you comment, Sharon.
At Sharon Wolf, Free Painter Street. First of all, yes, we should accept the allocation. We're paying for it anyway. Standing on principle when you can't afford, any of your bills is kind of silly. I would also encourage RCA to revisit that policy. With all the electrification that the state thinks that it's gonna have for electrifying everything, you're gonna have nuclear. You're not gonna have it with solar, you're not gonna have it with the wind project, that the technology to build it off of Humboldt Bay doesn't even exist yet. You're sure as heck not gonna have it with other alternatives if you don't bring this in. We've been very reactionary about nuclear ever since, all kinds of problems with 3 Mile Island and different issues. Nuclear is a huge component of the power in the EU and in other countries, of the green power that they're doing with small modular reactors, not the big giant towers, new technology that has been around. I saw a documentary on some new nuclear technology that they invented that was just amazing and was shut down by industry because it would have cost them profits. The United States has fallen way behind on energy production because of being so reactionary to things instead of using some common sense and saying, we don't need unsafe. That doesn't mean you have to get rid of everything. There is a middle ground that you can have there. So I think there's some language that could be come up with for the policy stating something to the effect of new nuclear technology is worthy of exploring. If the goal is to electrify everything and do all that, you're gonna have to change that policy. We could talk about whether or not that goal to electrify everything is a good idea in the first place. That's a whole conversation by itself. But if that is your goal, then you gotta have nuclear. But in the meantime, we all get to pay massive energy bills and gas bills and everything else. So please accept the allocation and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other public comments? Any hands were, oh,
I was just gonna say, one of the things with Sharon's comment, 3 Mile Island has one of the reactors still runs. And they're looking to bring the second reactor back through modernization. They're looking to bring that reactor back online because of the shortness of electricity.
sure.
I hope that's correct. It's true.
I just looked that up, yeah, that is true.
So a
It is,
lot of decisions down the road in the future.
sure.
For the tonight. Thank you.
Any hand raised? Emails? Okay, we don't need a vote, we just tell.
I think Councilmember Wilson can say that consensus of this Rio Dell City Council was to
Okay.
accept the allocation.
Okay. Thank you again, Councilmember Wilson, for bringing that before us. And thank you both for being here. Okay, moving on to ordinances, special resolutions, and public hearings. Number 1. Second reading by title only and adoption of ordinance number 407-3024, amending chapter 13.20 water wells of the Rio Dell Municipal Code to clarify the County Department of Environmental Health administers the city's water well permitting process. Page 50 in our packets. City Manager.
I'm actually going to go ahead and turn this one over to our Community Development Director, Mr. Kevin Caldwell.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, thank you. This item was originally introduced at your meeting September 17th. And again, this was brought to your attention, to our attention, because the county recognized that our ordinance actually does not clearly identify the county as the administering agency for our water regulations. We did have a question regarding setbacks at the last meeting. I told our council that I would look into it. I did check with the county. They actually haven't adopted setbacks at this time, but I did discuss our recommended setbacks, and if you look at page 52 of your packet, about the middle of the page, and these are actually based on state regulations as well. For wells, 50-foot setback on those parcels provided public sewer services, 100-foot setback on those parcels that depend upon what's called on-site wastewater treatment systems, or WTSs, or adjacent to parcels that are dependent on it, and then a 500-foot radial distance from the existing well. One of the concerns that staff has discussed among ourselves is the allowance of wells in general. Our water system is based on the number of hookups, the rates for our water system. So if we're going to lose water subscribers, that means the rates of the other folks are going to go up. So one of your options is, as the council, is to actually prohibit all new wells within the city. Every parcel within the city has community water available to them. And this includes the parcels west of Wally and Sandra Close's property out on Bellevue Avenue. The Dinsmore Plateau has community water, and of course, so does the Eel River Sawmill site over there. So that is an option for you. It's not currently in the draft ordinance, but should your council decide to prohibit new wells, we can certainly modify the ordinance based on your decision. Other than that, as we discussed at the last meeting on September 17th, we included some language that would prohibit the sale of export of city water. We also included a couple of new definitions. The setbacks, agricultural wells could still be allowed. It's just wells that would serve residences if your council decided to prohibit those. Again, that's up to your council and the talking point for the council to consider tonight. Other than that, I think those are the only outstanding issues that were discussed at our meeting at the 17th of September. If you have any questions, I, of course, would certainly be more than happy to try to answer them. With that, I'll turn it back to the council.
Okay, thank you so much. Councilmember Wilson, any questions?
No problem, no question.
Councilmember Warren? No. And I also have no questions. Now, if we decide at a later date to do something about prohibiting new wells, like we can do that at a later date.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can go ahead and accept this now. Great. I will then open public comment and receive comments from the public. Public? No. Do we have any hands raised? No. Any emails? No. Close public comment. And we can go ahead and vote now, correct? We're voting on this?
We need a motion, but yeah.
Yes, yeah. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance number 407-2024, amending chapter 13.20 water wells of the Rio Dell Municipal Code to clarify that the County Department of Environmental Health administers the city's water well permitting process?
I make a motion.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, everybody vote, please. Motion carries 4-0. Okay. Thank you all. Moving on to item number 2, introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance number 409-2024, amending section 17.30.360 of the Rio Dell Municipal Code, vacation dwelling unit regulations appeal period to be consistent with section 17.35.060 of the Rio Dell Municipal Code, page 67 in our packets. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Carter. Again, I'm going to, through the Mayor Pro Tem, pass this to our Community Development Director, Mr. Kevin Caldwell.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, the item before you is the introduction of ordinance number 409-2024. It is a minor modification or amendment to our vacation dwelling unit regulations, specifically dealing with appeal periods. We discovered what we believe to be an error in the regulations. Right now, the appeal period identified in the vacation dwelling unit regulations is 30 days following approval. Appeal periods for all other permits in the city are actually 10 days, and that's codified in section 17.35.060. Both provisions are identified on page 68 of your packet. If you take a look at it, the top one is actually vacation dwelling units that refers to 30 days, and then the bottom one applies to all other permits processed by the city of Rio Dell, and that must be filed within 10 days of the date of appeal or approval or denial. We recommend, of course, that we clarify, rectify that the appeal period for vacation dwelling units be consistent with the other regulations in the municipal code, that being 10 days. And other than that, like I said, this is a very minor amendment. We recommend the council continue the meetings to the November 5th meeting for the second reading, approval, and adoption. Again, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, so opening public comment. Are there any comments or questions from the public? No. Hands raised. Emails.
No.
Okay, time for council members to weigh in. Council member Woodall, any questions or comments?
No.
Council member Orr, any questions or comments?
I'm gonna say no, defer.
Is the primary difference between 17.35 and Rio is a 3.5 applies to a blanket of all of the,
Yes.
all the rest of ones?
Yeah, that actually applies to subdivisions, lot line adjustments, conditional use permits, every other permit process we have within the city.
So in order to be, if you go to 30 days, is 10 days enough? I mean, how do the people know?
It's 10 working days actually, and most people as applicants that typically would appeal a denial of a project or may appeal the conditions that maybe the planning commission put on a project. Very rarely do you see an appeal from a neighbor. I haven't seen one since I've been here, and I've been here, I think 11 going on 12 years now. But when they get the public notice, if the neighbor's interested, they reach out to the city, to myself, and ask the questions. And I answer the questions as best as I can and encourage them to attend the planning commission meeting, or sometimes it might be city council meeting as well.
So when somebody applies for a vacation rental and then it gets approved, by the city, do you send out a notice to the neighbors?
We actually send out a notice that we have appealed to that, and we only send out a notice to everybody within 100 feet of the vacation dwelling unit that it has been approved, and that they have so many days. Right now, the notice says 30 days to appeal it. I haven't got any responses from any neighbors based on those notices we send out after it was approved.
But they do get a notice.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And it is 10 working days, not 10 calendar days.
All right. That was my second question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I have no questions. So do I have a motion to continue for the second reading on our next meeting of November 5th? Motion and a second?
Second.
Everybody vote. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Okay, council reports and communications. Councilor Woodall.
Okay, this weekend, they're gonna have the pack out green team is gonna have a river cleanup, is at 9 and help 10:15.
It's a short one, right?
Yeah, and so many hands would help.
Yeah.
In that hour and 45 minutes. It's going to be at 9 and it's going to be on the south side of the bridge where you'll be able to park. 3 o'clock tomorrow, we have our nuisance abatement meeting right here at City Hall. And that's it.
Okey dokey. Thank you, Councilmember Woodall. Councilmember Orr.
Nothing to report at, HCOG on Thursday, if we can get a quorum together, and that's about it.
Thank you, Councilmember Orr. Councilmember Wilson.
Next week I have the RCEA, which you've heard about. And, so we'll see what happens there.
I'm curious to hear back.
Yeah, last time there was a bunch of public comment, people
Yeah.
showed up.
Okay, well, you got nuisance and you got the river cleanup. I think we have a beautification, walkability and pride committee meeting next Friday, October 25th at 1:30 here. I have a REDEC meeting this coming Monday at 6:30 PM in Eureka City Hall. The quarterly COAD update that was originally scheduled for tomorrow at 3 PM has been moved to be determined. We're not exactly sure when that will be scheduled, but I will keep you up to date on that. And don't forget the trunk or treat at the fire hall on Halloween. I think it starts at like 6 to 9 or something like that. And we had a really good turnout last year. People seem to really enjoy it, and it's a fun thing. And so get on your costumes and bring your candy. And even if you can't fit your car, I just bring a basket of candy and throw it at people. No, I don't throw it. I hand. I have one thing that I'd like to add to the agenda for next time, which is the Edward Street graffiti wall, as I've come to call it, because it's always covered in graffiti. It's that just right along the side of Edward Street, right before you get to the bridge on the left. There's just a green wall that we keep painting over, and then keep painting over it, and then we paint it, and then they paint it. I've had interest from the community and from the Community Resource Center into making that some kind of art project for the youth of the community. And so I'm wondering if the council agrees, if we could maybe talk about that and bring the powers that be and are interested in that to the meeting next time. It's up to you guys.
That's not a bad idea. Would the people still put the graffiti, I guess?
That is a question I would like to ask the people who would like to make an art project down there. Yeah.
The thing that fascinated me when we originally had some sculptures on the avenue, that whatever we call it, but we had some sculptures down. They were salmon and stuff. They were made out of wood. They were down by E&J Deli part of town, and they didn't. I thought, oh, they're gonna, because there were some really small little parts on the art thing. I thought they're gonna break all those off and destroy them, and they didn't. I don't think they touched the one.
Sometimes people surprise me. Our exercise equipment hasn't been vandalized. The mural down here at the corner doesn't have a bunch of mustaches on it. Okay, sorry, I didn't say that. I think that sometimes the thought is that maybe if we turn it into an actual existing art project, people will be less likely to.
That's what I wonder, if they just say, okay, they did something decent,
we'll ruin something else. Yeah.
We'll ruin something.
Yeah, but I would love to have that discussion with the whole council on November 5th, if that's okay, which it sounds like it is. And that is it from me. So without further ado, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting until November 5th.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion in a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Meeting adjourned. We'll see you all November 5th at 6 PM. I know.